Good morning everybody and welcome back to the channel. For today we have a very special video as we just hit 100 subs on the channel, and this is the first video slot I had after that milestone, and I'm here to fulfill on my promise. A while back I said that my 100 sub goal was to go back to our Z0024 Lego Legend of Zelda custom Hyrule Castle and fix it up. So today we're going to be turning a somewhat underwhelming playset, which I do still love, into the ultimate Lego Zelda Hyrule Castle playset. And before we start, I just want to clarify that Galleries is the ultimate display Hyrule Castle, and you should go support that project for its second run on ideas. But we're not here for that. We're here to make a playset, so let's jump straight into the time lapse, and when we come back, of course, I'll show you the real thing all up close. Here we are undergoing the build. Now, for those of you that aren't familiar with this castle, I recommend checking out the original video, as it's still a fairly interesting watch, and obviously I won't be showing you it with the figures today, bar the box. But the first thing on our agenda, if you haven't seen the plan, is to make the falling floor, which the Calamity goes through when you start the final boss battle in Breath of the Wild. So what we've got to do here is we've got to add some actuator levers, which is what I'm doing now, and unfortunately that had a fairly drastic effect on our leading up stairway, which is what I'm quickly fixing up now. However, this thing was really rough and it was definitely on my agenda of something to fix today. So always chopping things off the list, and this was actually a really difficult project for me to do. I didn't particularly enjoy it, but I did promise that I would do it for the 100 subs, and it was that kept me going. So thanks for that again. I know that this wasn't the most exciting reward for 100 subs, which is why I have a bonus project in the work, but I was really happy to see this thing finally finished, even though it was a slight pain to do. So what I'm doing now is I'm finally readjusting the stairs, is because part of the stairs have now got to be actuator levers for this floor dropper I worked out, because there's not much space left in this build. So what I'm doing here is I'm filling in the gap to make these stairs look semi-decent, and you can see I have a Technic beam here, which is what our actuators will be pulled out of, and we'll be getting to that in just a minute, as you can see there. So I've now got to work out, shimmying backwards and forwards, how I am going to pull that axle out to drop the floor, as this works in a very similar way to the sand falling function from Lego Minecraft and the like. In the end, I'm going to settle on a cone, which will then be blended in with a whole row. So I've got to try and make this row of cones almost look like steps, so that when the axles get pulled out, then it doesn't look quite as weird. But either way, we have our 4 axles in place, and I was just doing a bit of structural work there, where I've got to try and fill in a couple of these gaps, which is another big thing on our list today. There were a lot of gaps left in the original model, and I want to try and limit those as much as possible. Okay, and that is what I'm doing. I'm limiting the doorway here. I'm covering up over our mechanism, and you can see we have 8 cones, 4 of which are duff cones. I then wanted to attach something to the front to make them more look like a step, so it can sort of look a bit like a crinkly step. So I'm going to cover most of them over, but what's left will sort of look like decayed stone, and that's why we put the tiles on the front. So 4 of these are actuators and 4 are not, as you can see. And that's pretty much the first part of that on the list. However, we're coming over here now because I've got to open up the floor, which is what this is. I've got to make the gap the size I want, because this is actually part of a bigger feature which we'll be doing today, which is what I'm calling the Ganon poop out feature, where my plan is to have Ganon able to fit somewhere up in the tower, and then you can drop him and then he'll fall through to the observatory just like in the game. What I'm doing here is I'm making the falling blocks so that as those are retracted, these blocks should indeed fall off. We're going to do them as 2x2 cubes, which is what I'm trying to elevate here right now. However, things weren't going quite to plan. And there we go. We've just got to make our third one, which has to be a bit longer to fill the gap we want, because Ganon is a pretty big model in this set. As I said, if you haven't seen it, I recommend checking out the original. We'll make those light grey because of that mural in the centre, although I won't be doing any special prints for this model. I've had quite enough, thank you. Next job is again to fill in as many of the gaps as possible, especially here by the entranceway, considering that that is a major point of play if this was a playset, and this is all about playsets that have a couple of big functions, because our castle is also connectable with all of the other castle layouts, and you'll be seeing that at the end of wave 3 whenever we get there. But for now, obviously, we're just focused on this castle as its own playset. So I've managed to find a combination of wedge plates which fill this, and one other thing you may notice about this model, but only if you're really paying attention, is that I've sort of not fussed with parts not available in the right colours for this one. This one is about making the ultimate play set, not the most realistic, so while the play features and the style of the set I think are realistic, the structural techniques and amount of pieces is definitely not realistic, and there's quite a lot of recolours as well, just to make my job easier, as I had a hard enough time with this one as it is, just trying to make something that looked good for you guys, rather than really worrying about what pieces were available in what colour. Anyway, back to what we're doing now. Most of these large sets that have an open back like this have a trim. My mind thinks back to the D2C Hogwarts. We're just going to do a simple black line of studs along the top one, and then we'll do a light grey one along the bottom. Just got to mirror over those gaps from the other side, and we're back working on the entranceway again. I wanted to add a bit more detail to the entranceway, as I felt it was rather under-detailed, and obviously some of you may have pointed out by now that this castle is roughly in the style of the Breath of the Wild one. However, there is not an exact match, and this is because this is a playset castle. If you think back to the 2018 Harry Potter Hogwarts Great Hall, a lot of the dimensions were skewered on that, as well as a couple of the details were either missing or modified, and that is mostly to create the base play experience, but also just to work within the Lego system. And while Hyrule Castle is a very iconic shape, this is not like Brick Gallery's Ideas project, which is, in my opinion, the best display Hyrule Castle model to ever come out of Ideas. This is supposed to be a playset that is, well, it's all about play, which is what's important here. Another big job on my list here today was to add a lot more texturing, and that is what we're going to start seeing the attempt here. First up though, we've got to add a quick Triforce above the door, as I would not be able to make a Hyrule Castle without one. We're just going to add in the triangle pieces in dark bluish grey to make them, well, the Triforce, and then we're filling those gaps, and we have a completed decoration above that awning after so very long. That looks absolutely stunning in there as well. I really love that. Next job, again, more gap filling. This rock work down here was very holy, so I've got to try and make that work with the staircase. I'm going to be planning on using a lot of light bluish grey and olive green cheese slopes to bring these cliff sides to life and add that extra spark of detail. As I did say, this is the ultimate play set, so it's got to have some display features. Even though that's sort of counterproductive actually, the more I think about that. Either way, we're just building this up so it can connect to the main Technic frame, and then we will start hiding the main Technic frame. I wanted to make a somewhat natural rockwork appearance without being over complex, and in fact I will be mirroring the rockwork over to the other side, I think, just to make it less work again, but also to be more consistent. Not to mention there's that olive green and light grey colour scheme coming in, and then we're just filling up this gap over here so that we can actually have something consistent all the way across and that we can't see inside the back of the observatory anymore. Yeah, so onto my list of features that I did want to include. A lot of it was really simple stuff, like I wanted a basic Korok puzzle, which is basically just a filler for a room. I wanted an explosion feature on the stairs. I wanted swap about guardian turrets, but they had to be cut for budget way back. And I also wanted the big gun and poop feature, as well as a couple more interactive bits inside the tower, the throne. But apart from that, the main feature was just a Ganon thing. A lot of these sets, people underestimate that if there are no physical explosion play features, then it can't be called a playset. But a playset is more about providing a location in which play can take place, and the castle certainly has that. I took great care to make sure that there were lots of different walkways and lots of different places where minifigures could stand. I definitely didn't tile every surface. I also took great care to make sure that the expansions could be added properly, as well as that there were lots and lots of room for minifigures. Not to mention the couple of action features there are do work, as well as, yeah, compatibility with just the other sets. There's a lot more that goes into making a playset than just big explosion features. Anyway, as for what we're doing over here, I've been doing some quick tidying up of holes, and now I'm starting to mirror over the design of the rock work over to the other side. Decided I wouldn't detail the rock straight away, but I thought filling in this gap was important as it made up such a big portion of the castle. However, we will be getting to that detail in today's video. Now, this is a one-part video, and because I have to show you everything, I think we're only going to do about 20 minutes of building today, and then I'm going to finish the rest off camera and then show you the finished model afterwards. And I think that will work quite well. However, you have got some more time with me just yet. And as I mentioned earlier, we're back doing the trim now. So this one will be light grey along the bottom. I think I might go and add some cheese slopes and stuff to this in post in order to make it stand out a bit more. I really am referencing the one that runs along the Chamber of Secrets in the big Hogwarts Castle microscale D2C thing. Right, what is next? I think next up is probably dealing with the texturing on this wall. Previously, I had to use 5x6 panels and was reliant on stickers for Z0024, but that was just because of a budget which I impose on most of my custom sets. So you can imagine it was rather freeing to be able to just ignore the budget for this one. How I'm building these walls is I'm using a simple combination of masonry bricks, headlight bricks with tiles on them, and two different colours of light bluish grey and dark bluish grey, as well as the occasional rounded plate, as you can see at the bottom of those front two windows. Also going to replicate that window design just to add another detail to this wall, and I'm actually going to leave that 5x6 panel behind the banner because now, the further up we head up the castle, the less texturing I'm going to be able to achieve, and I think that's important to point out just because of the larger pieces, so there probably would be a reliance on stickers in the upper part of the tower. But anyway, on to what we're doing now. In the gap between filming these time lapses, I turned Ganon on his side and tried to contract all his limbs. However, that didn't quite work, as we're working on the portion where we're going to try and shove Ganon into the tower. Now, it's important to point out that you're going to see some collision errors in this segment. However, I have verified that all of these collision errors are just stupid studio bugs. At least by the time you see the real model, there should be no real collision errors. But as you can see, it didn't quite work. So we've suspended Ganon from his belly, and I'm now trying to turn all of his limbs in so that he fits in the tower, because this is where we're going to be dropping him from. He's loosely attached to a piece of the wall at the front of the tower, and we're going to create a little ceiling for him to rest on, and then when you pull out a axle, he should go poopity poop through the floor. Now, obviously, this feature is not entirely percent purpose because we're focused on making the ultimate playset, not the safest and Lego Systems playset. E.g., this play feature will not pass Lego's review, but I thought, considering that only about 30 people ever watch this, you're not going to care. Okay, next job on the list is obviously to fill in the gaps around the Ganon poop machine, because I took away these big octagonal plates, which I did love, but they had to go, so we're going to get rid of them now. And then it will be time for us to just sort of fix up the front where I took out pieces for Ganon, add a couple more details, and then take a look at the next part of that feature. I'm also adding in some floors. I mean, this space is basically unusable because the Ganon poop thing goes here, meaning that I won't ever be able to add rooms and decoration in here, which is a downside to my model because other versions like the Brick Gallery one, of course, have loads and loads of rooms inside this big part of the tower. However, I think the Ganon feature is way, way more fun and interesting and has a bit of a unique flair to my model, so we're keeping it. Next up, I'm creating a little trapdoor for him, and I'm trying to work out how to do it. I know that I need to line up with the holes so that when you have the two castles, because for those of you who don't know, another feature of this Hyrule castle is that if you buy two of them, you can connect them back to back, and that will create a big Hyrule castle. So anything that goes out further than those two Technic pins needs to be able to be removable so that the two can connect together. So I've just created a 1x3 axle with a little tile on the end so that we can wedge it in place in that hole. And now we're going to be working on the Ganon egg, which is the sunny side up egg that's going to drop down and be our trapdoor. I thought it was quite fitting that the egg would be actually his passageway out. Now, I'm not bothered in filling out this entire ceiling. I'm just worried about getting the egg and actually the mechanism in place. However, a couple of gaps at the back in a playset is really no problem. Lego does that all the time. What we've got to do here, though, is elevate my little disc a bit just so it fits, and then obviously colour it in dark red, which is completely a colour that pieces are available in. Obviously, this piece would probably be printed in a real set, but we're not doing that today. I've got enough to finish this build as is, and so far I think it's been about 3 hours of building maybe. I cut out a lot of my pause and thinking time. This build is really difficult, which is why I'm not going to be doing all on camera, because when it comes to fine detailing and fixing, you're not going to want to see that because it's just going to be all glitchy time-lapse. So I would say we'll do another 6 minutes of time-lapse, and then I'm just going to go finish it off camera. Next job, now that the Ganon poop chamber is in, I really need to come up with a better name, is to fill in this gap that's been in front of the tower. In the original model, I never finished it, so these towers were actually floating, and that was a big, big error on my part. I'm really ashamed that I had to leave the model in such an unfinished state. It is very unlike me to not see a model through to the end. However, This one and its angles, or you can see some of the angles over here and some of the weird bugs that it creates, and it just makes no sense, and I really don't like it for this fact. Either way, besides that, let's keep going. We have some gaps to fill. I'm just sort of aligning some plates. It's really difficult to get in the angle, so I'm using Studio's fine adjustment tool. I'm trying to find a plate that actually fits inside this gap here, and I'm realizing now that the ones I'm using are too long, so we need to find a smaller one to fit in that gap, and I apologize for the crazy camera angles. They sort of mimic my frustration. Whenever it starts moving around a lot, I'm sort of searching for another idea. Another big point that I missed out in the original Hyrule Castle is that Hyrule Castle is a hexagon, so I should have had another one of these smaller towers at the front, or I should have offset the two that I had so that I only had two. However, I just wanted to see what it would look like to start with, and now we actually need to modify this tower design because it's not strong and it doesn't work. Also, this one can be completely filled in, so what we're going to do is grab the model from the fixed tower that I did overnight, which you guys didn't get to see, which just involves a slightly new and better method for attaching them, which was completely possible before, but apparently I was just dumb. And now we're going to attach the four together so that we have a completely rounded tower segment that can't be opened because, well, there's no point to get in there because it's so tiny. However, we just got to fix up this one on the right. It's a good job I did one off camera, or else it would have been a lot more frustrating. However, the angles here decided to be painful, so you can almost see me trying to do maths through the screen. It's like, what's wrong with it? It turns out I needed a plate underneath, just like the other two had, but this big pause here is me trying to think of maths. I really struggled to do 40 plus 45 for some reason, but oh well, here we go. Let's add those walls back to the tower, and then we have our second little room. And again, this is a nice little playability space that works out quite nicely. And now we're back down here tidying up the rock work, meaning that we'll be adding all of our cheese slopes now, including some transparent clear ones to represent splashing around waterfall. Now, if you ask me, these waterfalls are perfect hiding spots for chests and stuff. However, I wasn't quite sure on access or whether I can count them as a play feature, but obviously there's always the imaginative play aspect where I'm sure a child would love to shove something behind there. However, that's not for me to decide, that's for the child. One other thing to point out is, yeah, just these rocks. I think they look really cool with this color scheme. I really like the light grey, dark bluish grey, and olive green color scheme. And now we're back to the stairs. So I want to add a little bit more detail here, but I also wanted to add a play feature. I talked about this earlier, where I said I wanted an explosive feature, like you're being shot with a guardian as you're going up to the sanctum, so that kaboom. And yeah, that's what I'm trying to achieve here. I'm trying to add some plates that might kaboom. You can see I'm trying to use the 2x6 plate by Mario standards, which will add as our little actuator lever. I've got to rebuild up the walls, and there you can see our lovely little actuator where I'm using the plate thing. The modified plates, that's the word. Next up, we're going to color those all in light bluish gray and then cover up some of the mechanism. And then, yeah, that should work like a nice little explosion feature where it flies open. Next up, we've got to replicate the rock work with a slightly random pattern on the other side. This side is actually going to be different, so that's what we're doing now. Adding in our dark bluish grey slopes, and then we'll come back in with the cheese slopes, which always goes much quicker in time-lapse mode than it does me trying to think about where to put them. And now we're basically just onto the detailing phase. I think I'm almost ready just to go off camera and finish it. And we're just adding a couple more bits like dark bluish grey things there. I decided I would texture these side towers, as you know, why not? However, I am just going to texture them both the same and mirror them, so just to save me some time. And then I decided that I'd give them all some variation. Each different side should be the same, which actually takes quite a lot of time to make sure you're doing this randomly. But I think it adds a little bit of texture, which I think is good. It's always good to have a bit more decoration, as these side towers are really nice, but also very oversimplified. So that sort of explains a lot. Just noticed some more gaps down there at the bottom, so we'll fill those in and then keep progressing around this tower, and then we'll watch Studio's mirror program fail as I attempt to mirror it. I also remembered you can turn masonry bricks around to get different effects, so that's something interesting for your time to notice. Here we go. Thing is mirrored. Just going to delete this one, and now we've got to try and get this tower into place. You may have noticed a little quick studio error there, where it didn't quite mirror my tower pieces right. Either way, that didn't go on rotation, and that makes me mad. Come on. There we go. Next thing I decided to do was quickly texture up these little column pieces, as there's another surprise feature I'm working on for the final part of this video. Yeah, so we're just adding a little bit moss green, some dark bluish grey, and then I want to try and tackle some of the last different features. We still got some gaps to fill, but I'll do those off camera. I wanted to add a balustrade to the upper level, which is what I'm doing now, trying to mimic a sort of crenellation style, but also not at the same time. I wanted to make sure this went all the way around, and it will actually consist of both colours. I had a fill-in gap there, and then we can copy it over to the other side. Copy it up and go on, perfect. And then we've got to fill in the little gap. I wanted to use some big arches, but I think we're going to have to settle for something a little bit simpler, using a round brick to get away with the angle here because it doesn't quite work, and then a simple little slope to merge it in. Get some dark bluish grey in there, some light bluish grey in there, some more dark bluish grey. Yeah, that works just about. And yeah, what is left to do? Just the fine details, really. Oh, there's a couple of gaps over here. Got to texture these up as well. Add a little bit of detail. As I said, you wouldn't be able to get away with much, and that clearly did not work using olive green. And yeah, what is next? Right, I think that is going to cut it for the time-lapsing portion. I hope you enjoyed this little look into the process, but obviously we're not done yet, as I actually have to show you the finished model. So let's cut straight into that and show you it all up close. And welcome back, and just look at that box. Perfect new style of box for a new era from just after Wave 3, considering all the Wave 3 boxes are done, and I really like this more realistic style. Obviously, it doesn't look too different from the outside because it's the exact same box as before, just with the updated castle on it. So let's get all that clutter out of the way, as that's not what we're here for, and talk about the actual castle itself. And doesn't it just look better? It's so amazing what a couple more hours of texturing, some extra details, and then those golden spires add to this model. Now, as I mentioned earlier, this model really isn't about display, it's all about that playability, so please excuse the inaccuracies if you just jumped here from the time-lapse, and let's take a closer look once and for all. So first up, a couple of exterior details which you didn't see in the time-lapse. There will be some stuff here that I don't cover because I already covered it in extensive detail in the time-lapse. However, the first feature I want to talk about is these Guardian Skywatchers, which is something that I worked on very, very last minute. I took the body of the Guardian and I made it into the turret form using a very similar head to the Skywatcher that I made. And look, you can exchange them for the side towers, which are all lovely and textured now, and they can be just guarding the castle, which I think is a really nice modular feature. There are 2 included in this ultimate playset, so that you have multiple options, and you can actually place them in multiple places. As you can see here, there is an extended version, which I put outside the front, and yeah, you could put these guys up on the battlements, you could put him up on the top of the tower, you could put him anywhere, and I bet with very little work, you could also convert him into a Skywatcher. Another thing to note about this picture is you can see the Hyrule crest above the door, which just looks magnificent, as well as that 2x6 tile on the slope up to the top, which is that play feature of if this Guardian turret shot you, which I think is really nice to have so close to a Guardian turret. Next up, over here you can see a couple more of the details as long as that beautiful rock texturing, which is just a real step up from what we had before in this model, as well as the fact there are no gaps anymore. We can actually look at this castle and see solid castle. You've got the waterfall with those translucent tiles, the new texturing on the side tiles, which I think really looks nice, the banners, the windows, and it's just so much better. I really am glad that I decided to give you guys this for the 100 sub award. It was worth it just because I got to do it, and I don't think I would have done it if I hadn't have had the channel. Next up, we'll take a look inside, which is none of this stuff you got to see earlier. And starting on the top and working down, we have a little space up here, which, while inaccurate, would be the home of the Hylian shield. You would have a printed Hylian shield up here in the dome, which obviously Link would have to fight through the castle to get to. Down below we have the bell just as it is in the original Hyrule Castle. You can also up close get a look at these golden spires, but we also have a bow up here to solve a Korok puzzle, a spear in a box, and as I said, the black bell. Now the Korok puzzle isn't actually up here, that's 1 floor down where you can see we have the Korok and his little balloon floaty thing. So there's no actual function here, but the Korok appears when you shoot the balloon, and the balloon's there for you to shoot, and it actually pops open. So there'd probably be something inside. And while I don't have a render of it, if you just look towards the top of the screen, you can see that the other floor, the middle floor between the two, has a chest on it, which would contain the same rupee bag as in my Wave 3 customs. Just like how the superheroes have those power-up accessories, we would have the rupees in that chest there. Next up, we have the biggest waste of space in the entire build, the coolest feature ever. In this little segment of the castle, which is the main body, we have Ganon. This is just like as if he was in his egg before his final battle in the Sanctum, and you can clearly see that he is suspended there, just kind of waiting. I think that looks great, and obviously this is a main function that we're going to get back to in a minute when I show you the whole thing, but let's keep going with looking at these interiors. Next up, we have the main throne room, which is a very, very large and open space. You can see the Ganon egg just on the top of the screen. We have the throne along with the window behind it. We have two large candelabras, just as in the real Sanctum, some more candles, and this red spiral staircase, which I really love. It's also designed to be slightly flimsy so that the red spiral staircase can be knocked over. And over in the rest of the Sanctum, we have some more details, such as the Hyrule banners, which are the same decal as my Hyrule Castle entrance set, as well as these two statues of prominent Hyrule rulers, which feature prominently in Sanctum art, at least the stuff I've seen, as well as two large candelabras, and this interior is mirrored, so the exact same stuff appears on the other side. And there's a close-up of the Ganon egg. As I mentioned, we're coming back to him later. In fact, that later is now. And the first thing I wanted to show you is again that little enclosure. If you notice the round gold tile down in the bottom right of the first image, you can see that that is actually the axle that when you pull out, drops the whole egg assembly down, leaving room for Ganon to fall. And you can see he's fallen off his two modified 1x4 tiles, and he's on his way down to the Sanctum floor. Now, obviously, in most cases, he'd hit the floor, but if you activate the play feature, seen on the right by pulling those square levers, all of the little tiles that make up the Sanctum floor fall out, and Link and Ganon can fall down to the observatory below, just like it happens in the game. Really love this feature, even if it's not entirely perfect. I think it's really, really fun, and it's something I wanted to see in this model from day one, so I'm really pleased that I was finally able to add it to the model. Then obviously he falls through, just like I mentioned, and he ends up in the observatory, which you can see over in the right. But let's get rid of that clutter and take a look at the observatory, which is of course now fully decorated. We have that large purple line that goes around the outside of the observatory, as well as some red dots meant to represent Sheikah lettering. We have a big circle piece in the mirror, and it's a very small but long interior. It makes perfect use of this space, as that's actually where it is in the Hyrule Castle, and I've never seen anyone include the observatory in their castle mocks before. And just giving you a close look up at those details, we have some more pieces which would have fallen from the floor or the ceiling even, represented by those black tiles. We have a golden sword to represent the weapons that are dropped in the arena for if you run out. And then over on the right, there's some more tiles and a sword, and it gives you a better look at those floor detailings. And of course, just like the original Hyrule Castle, you can combine two of these together to make back-to-back Hyrule Castles. And actually, I did do a lot of work to make sure that the two back up a lot better. I improved the side walls, which you can't actually see in this shot, but it's that kind of work which just sort of improves the castle. And I just think, wow, what a difference this has made, the castle. And I just want to take a moment now to also talk about how it works with other sets. So obviously, Ganon exists. You'll see this castle, the new one instead of the old one, in every single other castle video. So when I do my combined shots, this will be replacing all of the other ones. However, I also wanted to bring up as Z0021, which was the Blight Ganon Polybag, which was the 4-in-1 to make the Blights. And obviously the Blights do feature in Breath of the Wild Hyrule Castle as the boss rush. And I think that's really crucial to mention, as they can fit in the Sanctum. You can fight them in the Sanctum, and I really love that sort of connectivity, which makes it a real shame to me that I didn't finish this castle back when Wave 2 was still active, because it would have just meant so much more to see it with all the other sets and see it in action in its full glory. I'm going to try and put some pictures up that are relevant. Here's that rupee bag for anyone that was wondering. I'm including it in most of my Wave 3 sets. Works just like the superhero pieces, where little rupees to exist and just go around the sets, but they come in one little bag, if that makes any sense. But with one last final look at the box, I think I'm going to sign off today. So another major thank you for 100 subscribers. Here's to another 100 and all the future. Thank you for all your kind comments. I will be replying to all of them just as I always do. And I hope you continue to enjoy Wave 3 and the other content on the channel, even if it's slightly below average. And on that note, consider subscribing. Let me know what you thought of this one down below. And I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.